This is We the Sales Engineers podcast, show 5. Let's dig in.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi Majaba. Ramzi has watched Face Off 16 times in 1 year. Can you believe it?
Hello, you beautiful SEs all over the world. Today's guest is Ralph Daniels, who's actually not a sales engineer. But before we go deeper into that, I have a couple of housekeeping items that I need to take care of. If you want to stay up to date on the published podcasts, there are a couple ways you can do it. Actually, there's 3. You can constantly poll or check our website or every app that you're using. That's not an automated method, and Tim Ferriss would not approve. If you have not heard of Tim Ferriss, you should definitely check him out. He has a few books out there. I would recommend his first book, The 4-Hour Work Week, tongue twister. Or you can listen to his podcast, and I will link both in the show notes. I'm not affiliated with him, but I do like his work. If you do go through my website to get his book off of Amazon, I would get a small commission at no cost to you. The second and preferable method, you can sign up to the newsletter off my website. I only use it to let you know when a new show is coming out. I don't have anything to sell at this point, so you don't have to worry about that. And you can sign up from the main page of my website or any other show notes page. Finally, you can go to the podcast page on LinkedIn, We the Sales Engineers. Now that we got that out of the way, who's Ralph Daniels? I'll let him introduce himself in a second, but I'll tell you that I worked with him at Spirent. He's not a sales engineer, he's a product manager. I loved working with him. And he definitely brings a different perspective to the role and what we as sales engineers should be doing. And that's why I wanted to talk to him and talk to a product manager versus a sales engineer, because everybody has a different perspective. He's in between jobs now, so if you're looking for a product manager, hire him. So now, without further dilly-dallying around, here's Ralph. Hey Ralph, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ramzi. I appreciate being on. Appreciate you asking me to be here.
Oh, it's always my pleasure to talk to you, Ralph. I always enjoyed working with you. So we're going to get started. Maybe we can start by discussing who you are, and what you're doing on this interview.
Sure. My name is Ralph Daniels. I'm a product manager, and I've been doing product management for a long time, especially in the network and test and measurement industry. And one of the biggest tools for product managers is the SE in the field, the SE in front of the customer. So I appreciate being here.
No, well, so far most of my interviews, or all of my interviews, have been with other SEs. But, SEs know what they know. They don't know anything. Like, I don't know what you think about SEs and what they should be doing. So I really figured it would be useful for at least me, hopefully everybody who's listening, to have a chat with you and see what you think of the SE role. So, what is a PM? What does a PM do exactly?
Well, PM is in charge, in fact, is the CEO of a product or product line or a set of products. And the PM is responsible for defining, launching, doing the new product introduction of the product, getting the product through engineering, getting the product through manufacturing and release, and getting the product into the hands of the sales team. And then in doing so, the PM is also responsible for getting the sales team trained up and enabled and ready to sell their product. And then the PM gets the feedback from the sales team and the sales team's customer and feeds that back into engineering for release 2. And this goes on into a not indefinite cycle, but for a long-term cycle. And then at one point or another, the PM will decide to investing in the product line and cash cow it, or end the life the product, so there's no support cost to it. And then they start a new product.
So how do you decide?
Like I said,
Go ahead.
Excuse me?
No, you were saying something. You go ahead.
Yeah, go. No, I'm done.
Okay. I was just saying, how do you decide what product you're going to start?
Well, initially, in my recent cases, the products are pretty well. The type of products are pretty well defined with the company's mission, the business unit's strategic mission and vision, and so with that, you take that and you listen to the customer's pain points and figure out what is needed, and then go back to engineering and work with engineering to figure out what we can do to address those pain points. And then there's always ROI. And so for everything we do, we don't do it just for the sake of doing it for the customer or for the company. We do it primarily for profit. So we want to make sure we can build something and make whatever we build will be sellable and have a good return on investment.
How do you define that? Like, is it something that sales team brings to you, or is it something that you kind of have a hunch? How does that work?
Well, it varies in different. First of all, the investment is the actual engineering cost, and that is defined by man hours and a certain hourly rate that we just globally assign for all R&D. The return is based on, a lot of times it's based on like sales, like products. It's based on the company's pricing strategy, the company's selling strategy, and then the predictability of the market. And so you normally want to go in and find out what the total addressable market is, and then the service addressable market, and then what you can actually obtain. And so there are numbers out there, but for niche fields like test and measurement, is a little bit more difficult. It's normally a percentage of equipment sales, and so with niche markets, a lot of times it's based more on historical run rates, and so you do a little merger of historical run rates with the actual market and the demand.
Okay, and so all of this is something that you do on the side. The sales team has nothing to do with at this point. Is that correct?
It is not absolutely correct. We don't. Most of this, most of my information comes from the sales team being nice and inviting me out to see their customer, and the sales team invites benefits from me coming out because it gives them an excuse to go see the customer. They say, "Hey, customer, we got somebody from corporate in. Would like to talk to you about this feature or this your release or your upcoming test problems." And so that gets the sales team in front of the customer, so the sales team likes it when that happens. But then at the same time, it allows product marketing to hear from the customer directly, ask clarifying questions, and return with great information. And as a PM, if I go into an area, I normally try to go see multiple customers. So in 1 week, I can see up to 10 customers, depending on the area, and get 10 different viewpoints on the same subject matter. And by the end of the week, I will have enough information to write a great set of requirements.
So how would the sales team know what they should invite you for?
Well, that's typically driven by their customer. So their customer may have a need that the sales team can't directly address. Maybe they got 80% or 50%. And so the sales team will get frustrated and then call in product management, and product management will say, "Hey, let me combine, listen to the customer, and see what we can do."
Okay,
But
so
that's a reactive mode. A lot of sales teams also do proactive modes in such a way that they will proactively do what we call, especially they're working with an equipment manufacturer in my business, they will do roadmap alignments. And so these will be proactive sessions, figuring out what the customer may need in 6 months and what we may be able to do in 6 months.
which do you prefer usually?
Of course, the proactive is always nice.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Never enough time to get the reactive done.
Yeah, it sucks to be on the reactive side, especially for an SE who's trying to get something to work that doesn't really work the way it's supposed to.
Now, as a PM, I've seen like we discussed earlier, I've seen SEs from around the world and multiple countries, and so I got I've seen a lot of bad SEs, and I've seen a lot of good SEs, and there's a lot of great best practices an SE can do.
Okay, well, that's awesome. I would like to dig in on that. So I usually ask the question, what makes a good SE? But for you, because you started with it, what makes a bad SE?
I think you asked that already.
No, I didn't ask what makes a good SE yet, but what makes a bad SE?
Well, let me tell you, let me just tell you some of the best practices that I've seen with an SE, and they're all over the place. An SE's just got to be a technical people person, and a good SE will befriend the customer as a support person, as a partner, as a technical partner, as a liaison. And a good SE will never sell directly because as an SE, you want to always remain the customer eyes, their technical partner for your product line and how to help them out. And you always want to let the RSM or sales guy do all the selling, and that includes pricing, that includes quotes, anything that deals directly with money. You want to let that be handled by the sales guy. And this way, as a partner, you can, as an SE, you can start probing the customer indirectly as you're helping them out. Hey, when's your next project? Oh, where are you staffing that? Or how is the budget for your next project? Will you do you guys got enough equipment to help support it out? And so you'll ask all sorts of indirect questions, and then in the back door feed that through the sales guy, and let the sales guy then come in and set up a plan to sell to the customer. So as an SE, you're always selling, but never selling directly. And a good SE will also, and that's just on the sales side, but a good SE will also know, be a good generalist on the entire product line. And a lot of SEs love to deep dive and know a lot about one thing, but it's real good for an SE, especially if you're working for a company that sells a lot of different products, to actually know a little bit about everything, because the ideal there is to find a list of products that's going to help the customer and present the options to customers for a greater sell. An SE will also, I've seen good and bad SE. I've seen another difference between a good SE and a bad SE. When the problem occurs, I've seen a bad SE says, I can't believe they implemented it that way. That sucks. I mean, who the hell tested this? And so that's an SE siding with the customer against the company product. And a good SE will take it and says, wow, we will get that fixed as soon as possible. I'm sorry this has happened. Let's see if we can find a workaround. And so I've seen SEs, like I said, side with the customer, thinking that they're doing, being buddy-buddy with the customer and down in the product. And then I've seen a good SE always pump the product, pump the company, even though no matter how ridiculously the problem is, and then assure the customer that that problem will get fixed. Another good attribute of a good SC is always being prepared, always having their toolbox. And the toolbox these days are now, 20 years ago, the SC toolbox was literally a toolbox. It had screwdrivers, adapters, cables, anything and everything, hard drives, USB drives. And now most of all that can be done virtually or through the network. But whether your toolbox is virtual or physical, no matter for what your job is, you want to come to every account with all the essentials of being prepared. And part of that preparation is doing a good SC will know who to contact to do a deep dive on the customer's issues before the demo, depending on the demo. Also, a good SC will be very in sync with its salesperson, because you want to go into each account demo, each account call with a discussion on the goals and plans of the salesperson. If he or she wants to sell this product, the last thing you need to do is introduce a new product to confuse the customer. So it's no matter how in sync you may be with your salesperson, you want to make sure before every call that you're especially in sync on that call. I've seen SCs, really. And the other problem with SCs, they know the problem down to the technical feature, and the sales guy does not. The customer does not. And so an SC sometimes will unsell a product based on one little feature that the sales guy could sell around. And so it's also important not to do that. So you want to just let the sales guy sell and worry about the, unless it's a major roadblock, I wouldn't bring it up, and never bring it up directly in front of the customer. Let's see, and some SCs may disagree with me on that, because they got to live with the problem after it's solved. But it's all about, at the end of the day, it's all about making the sale, and it's also all about supporting the customer so that they'll repeat on the sale.
Well, just to clarify on that, if it's like
Sure.
a requirement that they said they needed and we cannot do, I personally wouldn't be able to tell them, oh, yes, we can do that, and just sell it and figure it out. But
yeah, no, I hear you there, but there's been, I've seen where the sales guy's solution would cover 85% of the customer's problem.
Yeah, well, if it's not the
and the SC will still, and sometimes the SC will bring up that 15%, and it's good to bring up that 15% sometime, but you have to be strategic when to do it, because you still can get the sale, you still can, address most of the issues.
Yeah, well, as a general rule, SE should not be bringing up objections on their own problem, their own products from the get-go. So I agree with you on that. And yeah, in a lot of cases, it's hard to find a solution that solves 100% of a customer's problem.
Right.
So if you just are pointing out where you don't solve, go ahead.
Right. My rule is if the sales guy sold it, the customer is happy about most of it, and I'm sitting there with a burning thing in my stomach saying, damn, we still can't do that one feature that they really want. And, I want to go at the end of the call, I would pull the sales guy aside and let them know.
Yeah.
And then let the sales guy figure out how to communicate that.
Or before the call, or let him know before the call, so you know he's aware of it during the call.
Yeah, before the call, if I know the objection will come up, that's easy. The hard ones are the ones that get realized during the call.
Okay. So I'm going to play devil's advocate for a couple of minutes here, if that's okay.
Sure.
So you mentioned never sell. as an SE, don't sell, but gather information and then give it to the sales guy. If you do that, then the sales guy goes and talks to the customer, wouldn't that customer feel like he's been betrayed, like trusting you with information and then giving it to, and you go around and give it to the enemy, the way most customers see the sales guy?
It could, yes. If it's that blatant and blunt, yes. So, for instance, if the SE is working with a customer and the customer is saying, "Hey, we're going into this new networking protocol, and we're going to need support for that," or we'll be testing this new networking feature, and then the RSM, hey, they're going to start testing this feature. The RSM can then come back a couple days later. Hey, customer, we got new releases out that support this feature, this feature, this feature, and the top feature would be the one that the SC told them about.
Right. I also do it in another way as well.
It can be indirect. It can be direct. It depends on the situation, but it's yeah.
I usually just let the customer know.
Ways to spin it.
I like
what now?
When I have a good relationship with a customer and he tells me, "Oh, we're going to be looking into this," I usually let the customer know, like, "Oh, I'm going to let my sales guy know, and we can set up a meeting because we have something for that," and they're usually very happy with that.
Yeah, no, that would be perfect as well. Other information like budget size, group size, they're starting a new lab next door, all that information, if you have a good rapport with the customer, hey, is there any contacts over there? But
yeah,
you just want to keep the customer because a customer, and you'll see it, when a sales guy walks in the room, shields go up.
Oh, I know. I did the sales thing for 6 months.
They're very defensive about what information they can say and not say. When you're in the room as their technical liaison, they're often very comfortable speaking almost anything with you. So as a SE, you always want to just be in that listening mode and probing mode.
So I didn't have a sales guy for close to 6 months. So I was doing the sales thing. And who I considered to be my friends, like I would call them at any point, and they'd answer my call no matter what. Kind of stopped being my friends until they hired a new sales guy because, well, now I'm asking them about money. Like, hey, or like you mentioned you're gonna buy. Here's a quote. But as soon as I stopped doing that and went back to being the SE, after they hired my sales guy, they started answering my calls again. So it's funny how customers see the salesperson as the enemy, kind of like he's a necessary evil. Although every company that's out there has its own salespeople who are doing the same thing to somebody else's as a customer. So
yeah, I mean, so you lived it, and that's awesome. So you experienced it firsthand, and know, and even as a PM, a customer will often ask, "Well, how much is this going to cost me? Or how much is this going to set me back?" And I say, "Hey, we'll work with the account manager. We'll figure out, all the packaging we can do for you, and any trade-ins, whatever." Because it's even for me, I don't want to get in that sales relationship because once you're that sales guy, and it's good that you're able to rebound from that.
Well, it was fun.
I liken it to a car salesman. Everybody's dealt with that car salesman, and you're able to talk to your family about the vehicle you want until the car salesman walks in. Then everybody just freezes and shuts up.
Yeah. I kind of feel bad for most salespeople because not all salespeople are like that. A lot of salespeople care, like the good ones at least, they care and they want to do right by the customer. But they also want to do right by their company. So it's not really I think it's a mutually beneficial relationship between the customer and the sales guy, but that's the life we live in, I guess. That's how people see salespeople.
It needs to be that way. A sales guy really, really needs to be focused on closing that deal. and closing that deal ASAP, because deals go away, POs get cut day one, and a lot of times may get pulled the very next day because of a budget crisis. So it's real important to let the sales guy be the sales guy mentality to that customer.
Yeah.
Even though they care, but it's and a good sales guy can still care, and the customer's going to know it and use it. But
well, yeah, like if in the end, if the sales guy doesn't close the deal, he didn't do his job. So,
right.
yeah, and it is his job to kind of badger the customer, like, hey, are you gonna? Because like you said, money can get pulled any second, even if the customer committed to buying something. But it doesn't mean he doesn't care. Like, he's still trying to do the best for the customer. He didn't sell them something that they don't need, in that sense. And going back to what you said earlier, you said an SE should be a good generalist and know a little bit about everything. So I'm a generalist SE, and I know a little bit about everything. I know a lot about specific stuff. How do you recommend that I prepare for a meeting where I know I'm going into talk about a product that is not really what I'm specialized in? It's one of my generalized products. How do you recommend I prepare for that?
I love that question, because that involves, guess who? Normally involves the product manager. And so the best way for an SE to prepare for that type of meeting is call the product manager ahead of time and explain the customer situation and get a list of differentiators, if possible, that will differentiate your product over the competitor's product. And understand that, if there's something to demo, what do we want to highlight within that product. But a PM could be a valuable resource for that. A PM may already know others within that company that are using the product in such a way that you could reach out to, because especially if you're dealing with large companies, large equipment manufacturers that span the globe. So a PM will be always your first resource. And then a SE, as an SE, will go through and become a generalist on every product. A good SE will just take notes on that product and understand the differentiators, understand areas to stay away from. And, I've seen SEs that have a note card or even an online notebook for each and every product that they've ever demoed. And that becomes your playbook, and that becomes invaluable as that thing gets bigger and bigger, and the more you demo, the more you add to it.
I'm just taking a note here because I think that's fairly important, what you just said. Yeah, that's a very good tip. I think that will be tip of the day, basically. Have a kind of a directory of all the demos that you've done, or all the answers you've answered for for customers, so that you don't have to go look for the answer over and over again. Because let's say I'm an SE who asked you a question as a PM, and then a couple months later I asked you the same question, then a few months later I asked you the same question. Would you still answer my questions?
Yeah, as PMs, we've actually worked with IT, and IT has purchased these big Q&A products that the SE could actually do research on their own and ask the question, and the database will spew out the correct answer. And the problem with that is the information, at least the information on the products that I've always dealt with, becomes stale fairly quickly. And I mean, sometimes it's valid for years, but other times you can ask me, is this supported? And you can ask me that in January. You can then ask me that in April, and I can give you a no in January and a yes in April. So those databases are good. They got good intent. It's Q&A, but like I said, often people don't want to take the time to even look in the database first. Often they don't, because as an SC, you're often, you wake up in the morning, you get 5 calls from 5 different customers on 5 urgent issues, and you got your sales guy saying, we got to see this and this and this. And so you may have a planned day the night before, but by the time the morning rolls around, your entire day is now completely different. And so you're scrambling all the time. And so you don't have time to really go look in the SQL database and figure out, the answers to these questions. You just call the PM directly. As a PM, I will answer.
Would all PMs answer? I've been in situations where I'm at a customer site and something else happens with somebody else. So... Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure about all PMs. I've heard there are PMs that will not answer, and to me, that's just not being a company person, especially if you're at a customer site. If you call me and say, hey, Ralph, I'm at a customer site, I'm going to give you 100% of my attention. I'll drop everything for you unless I'm at a customer site at that very moment.
So I want to say something about that. Specifically about you, Ralph, is that I've been in situations where I've been at customer sites and I needed help, and you've helped me even if it wasn't really your product that I needed help with. So just want to say thank you about that before I move on.
You're quite welcome.
I do have a question about PM relationships with the SEs, but I want to go back to something you said earlier. Like, you should never side with the customer over the company. Again, playing devil's advocate. Why not? Wouldn't that build a better relationship with the customer?
Yeah, it will. But at the end, as a salesperson, you are, as an SE, you're a salesperson. You're a sales advocate. You are on, everybody that works for the company sells for the company. And so you always want to maintain company loyalty, because you got to come back and sell again and again and again. I've seen this happen more with channel partners, distributors, et cetera. They'll take the side of the customer versus the company. And even for them, I think that's wrong. I think you still want to take the side of the customer, but you really want to do it with a positive light on the product and company you're selling, no matter how bad it looks. Okay, so you still can side with the customer and say, oh, that's terrible, and yeah, I don't think it should work that way. Let me make sure we're doing it right. I will get with support, engineering, product management, and figure out what we can do. I'll make sure we get this resolved as soon as possible.
So as a summary, calling your product crap may build a better relationship with the customer, but will definitely stop you from selling your product.
Yeah, but also it may build it up at that moment, right? It may give you a high in that moment. The customer may be on your side at that moment, but at the end of the day, it's going to prevent the customer from coming back again and again. And getting the customer, once you have the customer as a customer, you don't want to lose them over a bunch of crap that's happened. You want to win them over by acknowledging the problem. So don't deny the problem unless you think there's a viability to deny it, but acknowledge the problem, acknowledge that you understand the problem, and then acknowledge that you'll take action on it, and then take that action and then follow up.
So, okay, to follow up on that.
If you do that, then the SC is going to say, the customer, and I've seen customers over and over and over, and I'll ask the customer, what do you like about my product versus my competitor's product? And they will tell me the support from your sales team. And then I know that, the SC and sales team are doing a great job.
So, yeah, that is true. A lot of times it's the sales team that ends up making the difference, because a lot of products just work the same, just in a different, get the same end result, just in a different way.
Yes.
So, all right, let's go back to talking about the SE relationship with the PM. What do you think an SE should do to make the relationship better with the PM so that the PM would answer his questions when he needs it?
If the SE, okay, I give more credence to SEs that do their homework. You know, there are certain SEs when they tell me something didn't work, I know it doesn't work, and I will frame the problem in my head and try to solve it in my head as if this is a real problem. There are other SEs that never do their homework. They either take the customer's word, this didn't work, and they just directly call the PM without even verifying it themselves, and without doing any homework themselves, and tell me it doesn't work. And for those SEs, I will push back and say, "What did you do?" I'll start asking stupid questions. Well, is it plugged in? Is it connected to the internet? Is it? And I've had replies from the customer saying, "Oh," so you'd be surprised, how even the customer often will just pick up the phone right away and call the SE and call the PM when something doesn't work without doing some basic problem solving.
Okay, so if an SE calls you and he didn't do any basic problem solving, you can ask him stupid stuff until he wakes up. But what if a customer calls an SE or a PM telling him it doesn't work, and you know that he didn't do any basic debugging? How do you handle that? How do you recommend as an SE handles that situation, or how would you handle that?
Sure. So I get those calls all the time. In fact, when I first started working as a PM, I handed out my business card to everybody, and what would happen is I'd get tech support calls around the clock, and that's really not my purpose for handing out my business card. My purpose for handing out a business card: hey, when you have new features, when you need something modified in the code, give me a call and we can discuss. And so I quit handing out my card to everybody for that very reason, but I still get calls, and I've gotten calls, airports. I got calls at home at dinner time. I've gotten calls, all the time. And I try to be very supportive to the customer and helping them out, and I'll suggest a few things. But the other thing I do normally is I will get the customer's name and number. I will call tech support and have support call them up and follow up right away.
So, but that means they have to have bot support. So, as an SE, it's usually a lot of pre-sales stuff, which means the customer didn't buy support.
Well, the support guys I've asked to do this have never complained. So, and I don't do it too often, but you got a good point. I'm not sure that would depend on the company's rules and regulations, but yeah.
So you also have to build a good relationship with your support guys as well as an SE.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, even as a PM, as a PM, I've got a handful of go-to support guys that have been there for me, since day one. And as a PM, I will take, when I go to corporate headquarters, I take all the support guys out to lunch every time because those guys are my buddies. They make me look good.
That's very nice of you, Ralph. When are you coming up to Ottawa? I'll be in support for that day.
Invite me up there in the summer, of course.
All right, awesome, man. I'll look forward to, if you do ever come up, let me know. We'll go grab lunch.
I will.
All right, so we're gonna shift everything we've been talking about so far. It's been gold, but we're coming up to the end of our hour almost. So we're gonna switch to a round that I call the not so fire round. I'm gonna ask you a bunch of questions really quickly. You're gonna take your time answering them. Does that sound fair?
So you may take my time and answer them, or you want me to answer them quickly?
Whatever you want. It's a not so fire round.
All right.
I couldn't.
Not so far. Okay, I got
I
you.
couldn't think of another name, so I just
understand that.
put that in there. Yeah, I don't know. I find it weird, strangely weird. I don't think anybody else will like this joke, but I like it. Oh, thank you, Ralph. All right. So, other than a notebook,
I've listened to a few podcasts before.
Yeah. Other than a notebook and a pen, what is an essential tool an SE should be using?
Their ears.
Their ears. You're the second person to say that, actually. But that was a good answer the first time, and it's still a good answer this time. But like, I'm gonna note that you already answered this question earlier by saying like an online kind of directory of all the demos and POCs that you've done.
Yeah, no, and for every demo, I mean, including IP addresses, resources, PM, for every product, I've seen SEs that have pages and pages and pages of notes, and they go to them, and you put every simple thing in that notebook that you come across to make the demo look good, because as an SE, you may demo 100 other products between the next time you demo that product, and you would think you would remember all those simple stuff, but having all those notes in front of you just makes it so much easier.
Awesome. Question number 2. Which is there a book or resource that every SE should be reading? Please don't tell me RFCs.
No, I don't have one. I think every SEs are technical beasts. Technology changes all the time. And so I believe every SE should be reading a book on a new technology or learning a new technology, whether it's through reading a book or videos or online courses. All the time. So as an SE, I believe you need to continue to evolve your proficiencies at different things, such as, as we move into data centers it's becoming more and more important to understand all the different virtual cloud services out there. So a good SE today would be learning Amazon Web Services, Google Web, public cloud, Azure, and to me, in the networking world, that's what SEs should be learning today. And then, tomorrow there's going to be other technologies. There's, if you're into data centers, hyperconverged technologies. There's so much to learn all the time, and so depending on your field, an SE should be learning the next best technology.
So for Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Azure, is there a resource? It doesn't have to be a book, online resource that you would recommend people should check out?
Yeah, well, Amazon Web Services, there's as SEs in your field, I would recommend just taking the Amazon Solution Architect certification, and it's a high level and there's an associate certification, and there's high level videos, overviews. There's full on courses that you can take that will cost about $3,000, and then there's some online courses that you can get for $30, and depending on your level, which I know your level, the $30 course is probably more than enough. But and with Amazon Web Services, that's the leader of the virtual web and the virtual cloud. That'd be a great place to start, because everybody else is basing their stuff off of that.
Sounds fair. Is there any tips or tricks for time management and task organization that you can give us?
I'm a list guy, and list guys, they got pros and cons. end of the day, I always want to look at my list and see that I scratched a few things off. And then, but the problem is with lists that by the end of the day, you may scratch one or two off, but often you've added 10 more. That's true, but still, I think list keeps things in place. You also want to. There's another tool out there that I used to use in Trello, which is is like a tile list, and that you can date things such a way that you're not going to forget it. Because often with lists, things get pushed down to the bottom and you never see them again. It's good to, with lists, it's good to reevaluate the entire list once a week, if not every morning.
Was it Trello? Trello?
Trello, I believe that's what it's called. Is Trello cards, and it's a shareable online thing. Is like a Post-it note, and you can put them in groups and you can assign tasks, and it's a pretty slick way. Out of all the online tools, that's been the one I like the most.
Okay, I'll look into that. What advice would you give an SE that you feel they don't get from anybody else?
Ooh.
Tough one, eh? That's the Canadian in me coming out.
Yeah.
I can substitute with another question, and we can get back to that if you want later.
Let me pass on that right now, and we'll come back because I've got a lot of advice. But
all right, fine. We'll leave. We'll scratch the last part that they never get from anyone. We'll scratch that, but we'll come back to that. You mentioned you're listening to you've listened to a few podcasts. Is there a podcast you'd recommend? It doesn't have to be like any random podcast that you enjoyed.
I'm in the. No, I cannot. I'd rather not answer that question.
Okay. All right. Moving on. All right. So, hey, I'm pretty much done. We were at the end of our interview. Do you mind if I put your LinkedIn in the show notes?
Not at all.
Awesome. Well, did you want to go back to giving the SE an advice, or should we close on this?
Let's see. What advice would I give an SE?
Do you really want me to mess it up? I can really mess it up for you if you want.
You can really what?
Mess it up for you. I can make it harder if you want. Or it could be easier.
Like what?
What's the best advice you've ever been given?
What's the best advice I've ever been given? These are all questions since I'm interviewing. I should know, but let me. What's the best advice I've been given? Yeah. So the best advice I've been given would be, in a large company, there's always reorgs, and at the end of the reorg, you don't always get the position or the job you want. And so the best advice I was given at one time was, Ralph, you didn't get the job you want. Everybody knows that your best recourse is to put your head down and continue doing the great job that you're doing, because next time it'll get noticed. So I'm not sure if that applies Spirent at one time was having reorgs every week. It seemed like that way.
I think it applies. I think it's good advice for anybody, and that they don't. I don't think it's we receive often is that just put your head down and work.
SEs are pretty flat, but as you go from product to product, just take change as a learning There you go. We'll just put it that way.
Awesome.
As an SC, take change as a learning opportunity versus a detriment.
Awesome. Well, that brings us to the end of our show, Ralph. I really appreciate you being here. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks for doing this, Ramsey. This is awesome.
Thanks, man. I will talk to you soon, and let me know when you come up to Ottawa. I'll let you know if I ever go down to Raleigh.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you, Ralph, for your time. I really enjoyed talking to you, as with all of my guests so far. Like I mentioned in the intro, Ralph has a different perspective. I really like the idea of having a notebook, online or otherwise, about all the products you've demoed with the do's and don'ts. I've relied on my memory for the last 4 years. It's worked. But after a while, it's nice to have a brain dump and not have to think about things. Use my brain power for something else. Ralph also talked about certification. And he talked about cheap ones and expensive ones. I've been fortunate enough that most of my certifications have been paid for through my companies that I've worked for. But if you're looking for a cheap certification course, you might want to check out udemy.com. I've never used them before. I'm not affiliated with them. I just purchased one of their courses to try them out. We'll let you know what I think of it and if it's worth it. But I bought a Cisco certification course for $30 Canadian. So that's like $5 US. Thank you guys for listening. I ask again that you leave a rating or review or tell a friend about this if you find it useful. I'd love to hear what you guys think, what I should be doing better, what I should be eliminating. We can always improve, and I would love feedback. So, that's it for me. With that, this is Ramsey, signing off.